Thank you very much. Right, now we have our local board input. We have the Waitakere Ranges Local Board to discuss and talk about the formation of the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Forum, which sounds fairly exciting. Thank you, Greg and Mark. We won't start the clock until the room's cleared and you've got some time. If you just want to switch off that microphone next to you, Greg, that'd be great. Oh, or on, thank you. Kia ora, local board members and member Ed Ashby. Chairperson, if you just would like to introduce yourselves, and then you can all introduce yourselves if you'd like, and then you have around 5 minutes, but obviously as you've seen today that we haven't been playing exactly by those rules, so I'm sure there'll be questions as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to present. I'm Greg Preston, I'm the Chair of the Waitakere Ranges Local Board. With me is Sandra Coney and Mark Allen and our brother Edwin Ashby, who's also a proud Westie. So the request is for Council in the Planning Committee to think about the formation of a forum to discuss heritage area issues. First of all, by way of background, it's a subject that I've discussed many times at different council meetings. The Waitakere Ranges are the dominant physical feature of our local board area. From the stunning beaches of the west coast to the eastern rolling foothills, they provide a dramatic backdrop to the city. They give natural habitat, fresh water, artistic inspiration and places to live, and they make our place special. The Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act recognises the national significance of the area. It provides for enhanced protection for the area by formulating objectives that need to be considered every time a change to the unitary plan is considered, or if a non-complying or discretionary resource consent application is made. And as shown by successive 5-yearly reports and by recent staff advice, the Act performs its protective job reasonably well. Subdivisions are limited and the area is not currently suffering death by 1,000 cuts, which was foretold many years ago if the legislation wasn't passed. But it's important to continue to rethinking the application of the Act, and new threats such as curry dieback and weeds and slips are emerging, and we need to be ever vigilant for new threats. The reasons for the forum. In 2020, the Environmental Defence Society published a review of the working of the Heritage Area Act, and the report said, and this is a quote, "Consideration needs to be given to ways in which the heritage area could be kept alive. This could be achieved through the establishment of an independent body with dedicated funding to manage the heritage area on behalf of the public. It could either be a separate entity, such as a Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Implementation and Oversight Body, or the Waitakere Ranges Local Board could be tasked and resourced to provide the specific function. The entity would be charged with managing the area in line with the objectives of the heritage area while creating a stronger pathway to implementation. The entity would be responsible for overseeing the implementation of the local area plans and continuing the state of the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area monitoring." And as a local board, we believe there's merit in the idea of the forum. We want to work closely with the governing body in developing this idea. Mana Whenua's involvement is vital, and community should also be involved in delivering on the aims for the heritage area, and we believe that the involvement of the Karawamaki is especially important. Just a quick comment on the significant challenges facing the area. It's still recovering from the battering it took from the 2 storms last year. Kauri dieback remains a slow but insidious threat to the health of all local Kauri. Weeds and pests continue to threaten. Titirangi especially has a significant weeds problem, and the area is a huge draw card for visitors. The place has the danger of being loved to death. That's a photograph of one of the major slips. This one is from Piha, and it's going to take years to fix. In terms of opportunities, Section 29 of the Heritage Area Act requires there to be a deed of acknowledgement between local iwi, including Te Karoamaki and Ngāti Whātua and Council. The purpose of the deed is to acknowledge the particular historical, traditional, cultural or spiritual relationship of tangata whenua to the heritage area with any land in the heritage area, and parties would include Crown, Council and local iwi. The deed must identify specific opportunities for contribution by tangata whenua to the management of the land owned by the Crown or by Council. The Act is now 16 years old, and to date there's been no sign of a deed appearing, although I understand the work is now happening in the background, and I believe it is time for the deed to be advanced. I believe it's time for how the Act is working to be considered and reviewed. And one option to consider the varied topics such as the deed, reviewing, enhancing the effects of the Act, could be the creation of the forum anticipated by the EDS report. There should be places available for local representatives of our villages and of the environmental sector in any such entity. And the business of the forum could be to consider issues relating to the implementation of actions considered by the Heritage Area Act and management of issues concerning the Act, and decisions could then be considered by the Council or by the local board for ratification and implementation. There is a model. The Hauraki Golf Forum performs a not dissimilar sort of role as that is anticipated. That relies on statutory provisions for its creation, but there's no such provision in the Waitaki Ranges Heritage Area Act, but there is power for Council or the local board, for that matter, to set up such an entity. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the efforts of all four of you and many others in leadership roles who have protected the ranges and do a phenomenal amount of work for this taonga. My first just brief comments before I go to questions are that I think we would no doubt support the local board setting this up if they felt that that was appropriate. I think it would be because you already have mana whenua support, which on other forums that's not always the case. And the Hauraki Golf Forum obviously is slightly different because it's set in legislation, much like the kaipara. The other thing was the deed of acknowledgement, and thank you to the leadership of this committee. We are, I think, getting it back coming to us in June or July for further discussion. So I think this will be a nice kind of timing-wise to connect that up. So thank you for, obviously, Member Ashby for really making quite a lot of good push on that to finally get there after such a long time of kind of not moving forward on that. So I think there's a lot of work from staff that are going on in the background, but we will make sure that you are equally connected to that conversation when we know those dates. I'll go to questions. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, and I'd be delighted to move this if possible, Chair. Firstly, I suppose it leads on from your kind of korero, Chair. Do you need anything from us as a regional body to set it up?
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. We've always talked about should we do it or should Council do it. The one advantage of Council doing it is considerably more resources that you have. And so from that point of view, we think there's a logic for you to consider that role, although we would certainly be very happy participants in it. But otherwise, we're happy to set it up, but the resources are I think the most important issue for us to work out.
Okay, maybe we might need a yarn sort of off meeting to try and work out through those details, but I think it's a really great thing. Secondly, and you've kind of predicted my second question, what's your take on the level of funding provided for environment and conservation work in the Waitakere Ranges?
Not enough. We pour a fair bit of our LDI into areas such as weeds control, and we do that because we do want to preserve and enhance the Act. But my view is the Act creates a requirement for council whenever it makes any decisions, including funding decisions, to think about the operation of the Act and its objectives, and to reach those objectives, the funding needs to be adequate, and it's not right now. We're going backwards. So we think that again, we're getting back to the money question, but that the resources are all important in terms of what we can do to preserve and enhance the area.
Thank you so much for your work. Thanks, Chair.
Good, Councillor, thank you. And now we go to the other part of the Waitakare's, Councillor Turner.
No, it's not the other part, Mr. Chair. I was on this board, so it's my part of the Waitakare's, and it's one of the reasons I was on this board. Good morning, Cameron, comrades. And Ed, thank you very much. I see and hear that you have complained about lack of engagement from staff. I have put out pages and pages of questions, etc. on this, and thank you very much, Ed. Te Kauramaki is the only people who have engaged with me at any length. But is this co-governance? Because you have just said that in this, and the only proposal I've seen so far, other than the deed of acknowledgement content in the Act, is a Heart of the Ngāhere proposal from Te Kauramaki. And you have said here in this delivery that you're talking about sharing that activity between the board and Te Kauramaki. So that's my first question. Do you see this as a co-governance?
Thanks for the question. I don't have any personal reservations about the concept of co-governance.
I didn't ask if you had reservations. I asked if you saw it as that.
The deed itself is council land and there's Crown land, and the deed recognises that locally we should have a significant say in the management of that land. It's logical for the forum to consider heritage area issues completely, and Te Kauramaki and Ngāti Whātua have a significant interest in making sure they're involved in those discussions. And perhaps Social Leader would comment as well.
Yeah.
Would comment?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I'm not a member of the local board. I'm here, and I'm in this 5 minutes. I'm representing Te Kauramaki, not the IMSB, but I think taking models like the Tupuna Maunga or the Hauraki Golf Forum was the kind of general idea, and I think it comes down to three things. One is this is supposed to be nationally significant by legislation, yet it's in my opinion, forgotten poor cousin of the Hauraki Golf. It's supposed to be managed in an integrated way, which it isn't. It's managed in a siloed way, in my opinion. And it's supposed to be enhanced as well as protected, and so some things have been, but not all things, and that includes community things as well. And so I can't speak to co-governance for that side. For us, it's probably more like a co-management type of thing. That's the Act talks about iwi tangata whenua contribution to decision-making of the management of the public land, and then the overall implementation of the Act. So that's kind of the language in the Act. But there are models out there that I think you could look to emulate.
Thank you. Just two more questions. So leading on from that, you acknowledge that the Act covers 27,000 hectares, of which 10,700 is private land, and implicit through the Act is the fact that there's two distinct separations there. So how do you see a machinery like you're suggesting working across the private land?
So I live in Tirangi, which is part of the heritage area.
Me too.
And I'm perfectly, to deal with environmental issues, you can't just stick to the publicly owned land and stop there. To deal with environmental issues, you've got to go throughout the whole area. Weeds don't respect boundaries. So
How do you see, I'll leave that. My last question, please. Sandra, I did give you some pictures, if you would.
Just while those are coming up, if I could also add, we're fully aware we have one of the most dense groups of residents and ratepayer groups in Tamaki Makaurau. I would suggest that a forum provides probably one of the greatest opportunities for participation of community in these conversations on behalf of the private residents. So I think that any forum that we have is actually creating an opportunity for participation rather than a more centralised conversation going on.
Do you not see the combined R&R of the Waitakeris, which represents 17 R&Rs, I understand, as being able to achieve that?
No, because its scope is far wider than what we're looking at here. What we're looking at here is something that actually brings a wide range of diverse voices. That's one forum, and it's a great forum. It's really good. But it's not the same as one based around the Waitaka Ranges Heritage Area and the focus of the legislation there.
Okay, so my last question is, and I'll only pose it if we can get the photos up. Can I just scroll through the four of them, please? Is this what your collective there thinks is natural, and how we will manage our native forests and our heritage area if we accept what you're proposing here? Thank you.
I'll invite Sandra to comment on that.
I think you're leaping too far ahead, Ken. We haven't talked about, we wanted to come here first to talk about this. We haven't really talked about whether it's governance or management. We haven't talked about who the people would be that were represented. And I'm really clear that our communities who absolutely supported the Act, otherwise it wouldn't have happened, are part of that. So there needs to be a lot of talk, but that would be on my personal agenda, Ken, that we could get some more flexibility in the rules that government has for upgrading tracks so that they're safe and won't spread carry dieback. At the moment, there's only one model, and it's that. So it actually is a role, I could throw it back to the council and say, you know, the council should be advocating that there are different standards for different types of tracks. It used to be 3 standards under the regional parks management plan, but with carry dieback, if they're carry dieback tracks, they're getting one built standard like this.
Do you not agree that the natural pest management strategy applies to DOC too, and DOC aren't doing that? And so I'm asking, where's this coming
Well,
from?
I think that's, I think that's something definitely council should take up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. Deputy Chair, just if we could make sure we stick to the formation of the forum if possible. Kia ora.
Thank you, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for your presentation. I'm hugely supportive. I always prefer community-led and driven initiatives, and we should get out of the way. Having said that, do you need us to have a look at what those options might look like for you in terms of council support and what status the forum might hold? I'm thinking of Manukau Harbour Forum, which has been around for a long time but doesn't always get things, you know, to where it needs to be, because it's a forum and doesn't have governing body around it, perhaps. I don't know, but is that what you're asking of us? Can we just have a look at what it looks like? Because you can go and set it up yourself. I mean, that's fine, but actually you need a bit more oomph in there, I think.
We thought taking the opportunity to talk today could kick that process off. If the formation of the deed is to come back to this committee in the near future, then this could be a topic to think about at the same time. The deeds and the forum could be quite interlinked, really.
Right, thank you for that.
Kia ora, Deputy Chair, and yes, I've just got Megan as I've seconded it, unless Councillor Turner would like to second it, but just adding this, Councillor Henderson well, we'll type it up, but it's largely saying to report back on potential formation as part of the, it's not technically the deed, but it could be part of the, it's all related. So, because it would be nice to know, especially if you want us to be setting it up, not local board, and what resourcing, then it should maybe be decision from the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee. But, I'm happy if the local board wants to move this forward, but I think we could have all of that. And if we do have a workshop, obviously you'll all be invited to that discussion too.
Kia ora, sorry, Chair. If I could also just respond to Councillor Dalton in terms of scope. Again, just the important thing here is this is a statutory area. So there's an act that sets all of these out and these objectives, including integrated management and enhancement. And I guess, I've spoken with 3 ministers of DOC now about this, and they've all said, yeah, great, when's council ready? That's the question, because being nationally significant, my view, this is just my view, is central government has a role, not the lead role, but they should be have skin in the game in this as well. If they've designated it through an act of parliament as nationally significant, they need to back that up. So.
Kia ora, and there's the additional C, if that's okay, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Deputy Chair as well. Councillor Darby.
Thanks. Councillor Dalton's question is sort of drawing out what I was wondering as well. So you're looking at a forum, not just to discuss, even though your slide says to discuss, the outcomes are governance over the area. And I'm looking at our advisory panel. So have you explored and put a line through the advisory panel model? Some of the advisory panels have a lot of powers, like the urban design panel and the city centre advisory panel. So you put have you considered the value of it becoming a panel versus a forum? And I guess when you're talking forum, you're talking more like Hauraki Golf or Tupuna Maunga Forum with quite specific governance decision-making authority. That's my question.
Thanks, Councillor Darby. We haven't ruled out any particular model. Whatever works is obviously what we would like to use. It needs to have a certain level of status, which perhaps a panel doesn't necessarily have, but it's certainly something that I would think about more.
Yeah, so it's sort of early days. It's seeding the idea and then, looking for general support to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Easy.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Thank you for that. I just recently found an old photo from 1963 of me surfing at Piha, which is probably before some of the people, the commentators here, were even born. One thing I have noticed, there's a hell of a lot more people living here out there than when I first started going surfing out there. I do support what you're trying to do, by the way, but my question is, of late, as more people arrive, they're living in more and more precarious positions. And after the recent flood, when I was in Karikari in particular, we visited a lot of houses that really should never have been built. It was just a matter of time before they slid into the drain. And you wonder, would you consider a population limit, for instance, on within the Waitakere Crange Heritage Area, because it doesn't include the towns, and it just or making it more difficult. Because the houses there, we all see we go out there regularly, they're more and more precarious with more and more complexity to keep up where they used to be. And the houses are getting more expensive and wiping out bigger. And there's no sewage systems and that's irrigating the ground. It's a disaster happening in some ways. And so I would like to see whether you, as the people who are pushing this and represent the area, would consider some form of population limit or some form of making it more difficult for everyone else to arrive. I know that would make it sound like you're trying to stop many more neighbours arriving, Sandra, but I just feel that...
Yeah, Greg, you're going to lock us all out?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question and a good point. Sandra and I were around when the Act was formed back in 2008, and one of the drivers was that we recognised that the area had limited subdivisional potential and limited carrying ability. And so the idea of the Act was to slow down and eventually stop subdivisions from happening. And back then, from memory, there was about 1,500 titles could be eked out of the area. I believe possibly about half of those have been eked out since 2008. But there's certainly, in terms of development, it's going to hit a ceiling with
It's hit the ceiling in Carry. I mean, some of them should not have been there.
Yeah, in fact, we might have overshot the ceiling and we may have to go back even more. But population...
Nature's telling us the ceiling.
Yeah, population growth has been limited by the Act, and that was a deliberate feature of it, and it's something that, for the reasons you've outlined, I think is a very important part of the Act.
And the second bit, I know there's not quite a thing, but Councillor Ken put up some pictures. That's all a response. The working track rules and stuff is an overreaction from Cave Creek. And I remember I was brought in to look at a whole lot of things after that, and they went from having no rules to far too many rules. So again, this is what New Zealand does. We have nothing, and then we lurch to one side, then we've got to come back. But that's another one we've got to find the rule for. That wasn't a part of their stuff. But I support what you're doing, but I just feel that too many people is one of the biggest threats out there.
I'd agree.
But most of the regional park takes up 17,000 hectares of the whole heritage area. And as we found when we did the work before the legislation was put together, that most of those places had been built on, particularly in the coastal settlements. So there just ain't a lot of, they can't get into the regional park. So what we've got with a lot of those settlements is pretty well what we're ever going to get. Another thing about some of them are still about half batch owners and half permanent residents. So there's often tension between batch owners and permanent residents about the amount of infrastructure and development, with batch owners very much like to keep things the way they are. That's what attracted them there, and not too keen on things like footpaths. So I think that we're not going to get a huge amount of population growth there. We're much more likely to get growth in visitors. But even so, my family's been there since 1936. I haven't, because I was born after that. But I've got photographs of crowds on the beach that in like the 70s and 80s were bigger than anything we get there now, because people have got more choice, and a lot of people like going to the mall rather than surfing.
But people who visit don't build sewerage systems into the ground, and they don't do a whole lot of that. And the batches are being upgraded to massive retaining walls, huge things up on the top of the hill there in the way in. It just shocks me, and they're all going to fail.
I think, Mayor, we're probably going deeper than the discussion here, but part of that will be considered as part of our hazards plan change once the government allows us to change our plan. Member Henare, waiting very patiently.
Thank you for waking me up, Mr. Chair. Can you, Greg, point me to anything that mentions co-governance?
Depends how you define co-governance. The Act does talk about the creation of a deed, which is to provide iwi input into decisions concerning the public land at a very basic level.
That wouldn't mean co-governance, would it? That's not what the Act says.
It doesn't use that word, no. Co-governance has more of a political definition than a legal one.
It certainly does, and it looks as though it's scared off a few horses. Hey, in terms of where this work sits, how does that fit into the Act? And I heard Ed say that a number of DOC ministers are supportive of this move. Is there a legislative requirement needed? I mean, does there need to be an amendment to the Act to get this going, or not?
I believe the work is now underway, and there'll be a report coming back to this committee in a couple of months' time.
That's from who, Greg?
I've been advised previously, and it's been mentioned today at the meeting. So.
Okay. No, cool. Thank you, Bob.
Correct.
Cool. Member Handay, we can provide you and the Secretariat with those details, and you'll obviously be invited to any workshop or briefing or meeting that the deed is discussed, which should, I believe, discuss this at the same time, or in a connected or non-connected way. If we don't need to overcomplicate things. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. I'm glad Board Member Coney mentioned the regional park, because it's not mentioned in the presentation. Obviously, it's so obvious that you wouldn't mention it. But however, Parliament would not have considered the Waitakere Heritage Area of national significance without that regional park. And it seems to me that what you are bringing to our attention is a certain a vacuum of governance in relationship to at least the Waitakere Ranges Regional Park, because this council does not have a regional parks nor a parks committee. The parks responsibility is part of this committee, but it unfortunately comes pretty low on the priority scale. We don't get that much time to deal with parks, let alone regional parks. My question is, in regard to a forum, would it not be within your present powers as local board leaders to actually institute a forum between the West, if you like, or Waitakere local boards, and set up a forum under your responsibility, given the democratic power that you have as representatives, elected representatives of the people of the Waitakere area? Why not initiate that yourselves?
It's certainly something that we've thought about. We thought that it was diplomatic and appropriate and proper to discuss this with the governing body as well, so that there can be a joint discussion about the best option.
So this is a kind of a consultation with the governing body in regard to contingent plans you might have, as it were, sort of.
Yes, essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Leone.
Oh, kia ora. Look, I just wanted to say I fully tautoko and support what you've put up, but I did have a question for Member Ashby, and it is probably more of a side issue, because we're talking about heritage here and so on, and tikanga Māori as well as part of that, and I know that co-governance has been raised. I just wanted to ask Member Ashby, how does it feel when we still have elected members that can't pronounce names of places and iwi in te reo Māori, and do we as council need to be doing more as that of that, because it's 2024 and there's so much free resources out there, and I think at this point, I still think it's really important that we raise that issue. So kia ora, Ed, if you could just respond to that.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you for the question. I mean, yes, I guess is the short answer. We should all be doing better and improving. I guess if I can speak on behalf of Kawerau Amaki, you know, this is our heartland, our the beating heart of our tribe, our identity. If we're not here, we're nowhere. And I've been growing our team. We're the only iwi without a marae, but I've been growing our team, and it's interesting seeing it through their eyes. I've been around too long, so I'm used to it. But seeing they're new to all of this, new to working with Crown and Council and different people, and seeing how they're talked about and how their rohi is talked about. It's very interesting. So yeah, look, I think. Just trying to be polite, I suppose. But yeah, there's always more work that can be done. I guess for me, I'm just really keen I've got my eye on the prize of trying to get better outcomes for this heritage area, because that at the end of the day is why it was set up. Whether I'm here on behalf of Kawerau or not, that's what the actual outcome is national significance, integrated management, enhancement. And yes, there is a role for Kawerau and statute in the mix there. But thank you for your question. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Leone. Well, thank you all for presenting. We have no more questions. We will see how much advice we can get to that discussion for the deed of acknowledgement. I do think it's connected, but I think they are. I don't want one to hold up the other. I'm assuming my personal view is that it would be good to have the governing body or the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee support behind it, but also I would believe there'd be nothing stopping the local board setting a process up with Te Kawerau Amaki itself in case the governing body didn't support that direction or something. So thank you for the work here, all four of you, and I think it's an exciting way forward, and it can only mean better outcomes for Waitakere Rangers. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Cool. Would you like your name recorded?
Record that, please. Thank you.
Councillor Turner would like his vote opposed. Any abstentions? Thank you. Right. I think we might do item 8, see how long it takes, and then, yeah. Oh, there's no extraordinary business. Right. We might just pause for a bathroom and water, cup of tea break. Say 2 minutes past 12, we'll come back.